Exodus 13 verses 3 to 4 says, And Moses said unto the people, Remember this day in which ye came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month of Abib. So, friends, as we continue to prepare for Passover, the instruction is given to remember this day. Now, which day? What day am I to remember? Remember the day when God delivered, when God redeemed you from Egypt. Remember the day God freed our ancestors from Egypt. What day is that? The 14th of Nisan, when God delivered the children of Israel from the house of bondage. And guess what? It is by the strength of his hand that he brought them out from the house of bondage. So we are reminded to remember this day when God delivered the people in the month of Abib or Aviv, or in the month of Nisan, the first month of the biblical calendar. It was on this day, the 14th of Nisan, God skipped over the houses that were painted with blood, and he rescued his people from the hands of Pharaoh, from the house of bondage. Now, this was done by the strength, by the chazak, the power of God. Why? So that his people could grow firm, could be strong, could be mighty, could be powerful. He firmly grasped his people and pulled them out of the land of limitation. He prevailed over the enemies of his people. And so this means that no matter what we go through, no matter what we face, no matter the people that wants us to be in bondage, or the situations we go through that seeks to limit us, we have the power to prevail over these circumstances. When God, by his strength, the strength of his hand, delivered his people, it meant that he strongly supported them. Remember, he made promises to them. And in order for those promises to fulfill, in order for the keeper of promises to bring forth such promises, he had to support them right through. And so it is, friends, we are no different. God keeps on supporting us, and one of the ways he supports us is to free us from bondage, to free us from limitations, to rescue us from the hands of our adversaries. And that is why it is important that we accept his invitation to meet with him during Passover, so that we can be totally free from bondage. Now, if you realize, the scripture makes mention that we should remember this day in which he came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Normally, when we think of house, we think of a place that protects. But in this instance, the house of bondage that the people were in didn't protect them really. It limited them. They were forced to worship Pharaoh and the gods of Egypt. And so God, being a jealous God, delivered them from such bondage. Now, bondage speaks of being a slave. So they were a slave to Pharaoh. They were worshiping Pharaoh. They were burdened by this kind of lifestyle. And so God, delivering them, redeemed them, plead need to them to remember, to zakar, to boast in what he has done, not to boast in self, to be mindful of what he did, to take thought of how he rescued them, to celebrate, to preserve this special moment, to observe the feast of Passover, to be a historian, that is remembering the past. Now, why do we need to remember? When we remember what God did for us in Egypt, it helps us to connect with him. It helps us to remember who our identity is in. It helps us to understand that, guess what? We serve a God who is powerful, who is mighty, and who will give us the victory every time we face opposition, every time we face moments or seasons of limitation. It helps us to know that, guess what? We are serving the God, the keeper of promises, the God who is faithful. Question: is there ever a time when God has delivered you? It helps us to know that, guess what? We're not alone, and that God really and truly supports us who were created with his image and with his likeness. So we are to remember Passover. Remember the 14th of Nisan to the 21st of Nisan. Remember what God did for us. That is our testimony as well. What he did for our forefathers. Deuteronomy 16 verse 3 says, "Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread, therewith even the bread of affliction, for thou carriest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember," the same word remember, "the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt, all the days of thy life." Remember, boast in what God has done for us. Be mindful of what God did, because guess what? When we remember what he did for us, it also means that we are grateful for what he did. Take thought of what he did. Celebrate the freedom that God has given to us. Preserve all that he did. Tell your children, tell your friends how God has delivered our forefathers from Egypt, and how he has delivered us as well from the hands of limitation, from the house of bondage. Let us declare Psalm 77, 11 to 12. "I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember thy wonders of old. I will meditate also of all thy work, and talk of thy doings. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember thy wonders of old. I will meditate also of all thy work, and talk of thy doings." Shalom.